the scars remind me to appreciate the days I don't have to.
Is that Mark?
Yes.
Hey, Mark.
Hi, Michael.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Listen, you're going to hear another voice
Okay.
other than mine, but you're not going to be able to see him. And this is my good friend of, 50 years now, Jim, almost, or 40 years or so.
We're creeping up on it. We're within a year.
He's a studio executive, but he's been my friend. He started at one of the agencies, ICM, and worked his way up, and then went off to work for Paramount Studios, and then went off to work for Jerry Weintraub. And so, but you'll just hear his voice.
Okay.
He's mostly here to finish my sentences.
Yes, I've watched your podcast.
You have. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy your podcast. I've listened to several episodes, and Jim and I have corresponded a little bit.
Yeah,
too.
Mark and I have been communicating when we were first setting all of this up, and so.
Well,
I'm most looking forward to this. And your book comes out today. Your book, Brotherhood of the Gun,
November 11th.
Brothers of the Gun. Excuse me.
Yes.
Comes out November 11th, which is when this will be. This podcast will air, and it's coming out from Penguin Random House. Top tier publishing company. God, what an accomplishment! Congratulations, Mark. This is what, your 6th or 7th book? How many of you?
Yeah, somewhere I've kind of forgotten, but somewhere in there. Yeah, this is my first book with Dutton, which is an imprint at Penguin Random House, and I'm very pleased with everyone I've worked with there, my editors and publicist, and I think the book turned out. The production values in the book were really good. So,
well, we appreciate the help of your publishers. They sent us advanced copies, and they were really quite fun to read. So. Yeah,
I need to get you I need to get you both a finished copy. It's a hardback.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah, I would love that.
Mark, is this still the cover?
Yes, that's still the cover.
Okay, so that's the cover, and anybody who's listening to this and starting to listen to this, I really want everybody to know how much I want you to hang on and watch this podcast. This. Wyatt Earp Tombstone deal has been such a part of my life, and especially in the last 4 or 5 years, Jim and I have done so much research on it, and it's really kind of a lot of fun. History always is that way when you learn and about things. One of the things, Mark, that Jim and I have always tried to talk about. I'm not even sure if people are that interested in listening to me talk about it, but ever since I played Johnny Ringo in the movie Tombstone, I've always kind of had a not very good view of Wyatt Earp. And I know that your book is really about the relationship between Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday. Doc Holliday I don't have as many problems with as I do with Wyatt Earp, and what Jim calls the lionization of Wyatt Earp. And going back to 1925, every single movie, every single television series, every single book, every single those old-fashioned things that magazines, and why I grew up with Wyatt Earp being a hero.
I can still remember the lyrics to the TV show. Wyatt Earp. Hugh O'Brien's TV show, brave, courageous, and strong.
You can't imagine how many times people have recited that song to me.
Yeah,
a lot of people remember that.
So I read your book when it was sent to me. So that was almost a couple of months ago. But it felt to me that I learned some new things. You seem to be on the same page as I have been. And is it Jeff Gwynne
Yes, Jeff Gwynne wrote a great book. Yeah, The Last Gunfight. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just like for people to kind of understand Wyatt Earp and who he really was and what really happened, in my opinion, at the gunfight at OK Corral. So if it's okay with you, I would like to start with the gunfight, and then we can kind of and by the way, Mark, this might be a situation, and if you have time and if you're gracious enough, you might want to come back because there's just really so much to talk about.
Well, yeah, it is very complicated.
Yeah,
and the more you dig in, the more you dig in. It seems like
yes, exactly.
The more points of connection you find, and the more interesting tangents that are really interesting to pursue. And so I can see how it remains a continuing source of interest, even 140 years, 50 years after the event.
144 years, yeah.
And people continue to write books about it. Movies continue to get made, and I really noticed a whole spate of books that came out in the aftermath of the movie, of Michael's movie Tombstone. That's when it seemed to me that there were a number of books that came out. So the topic just continues to generate interest. So
well, I think the movie Tombstone has helped keep True West magazine afloat because there's such a following for that film, and they
and Bob Bosbell goes back to Tombstone about once a year to write about it. It's a perennial topic. Michael and I wrote a couple pieces about Tombstone for that publication. So you could say that, and we kind of relied on. Kurt gave a pretty good interview to Tombstone about 20 years, or to True West about 20 years ago, talking about the movie. And Michael and I read that and made commented on an article that we wrote about the making of the movie. So it is true that they keep circling back to it. So the interest is still there.
Mark, let's just start. With the gunfight, and then we can just kind of work our way back, and then in the immediate future of what happened right afterwards, because I'm not sure that a lot of people are aware of what happened to Wyatt right afterwards, and who Wyatt was before, Before I get there, though, let me ask you a quick question. I thought I read it in your book, and then I thumbed through it again this morning when I knew I was going to be talking to you, and I couldn't find it. Did you write in your book that Wyatt Earp's first wife's family was not particularly fond of Wyatt Earp around the time of her death?
I didn't
no
in my book, but that is a story that's out there that and apparently based on some actual legitimate account that her father was a hotel owner in Lamar, Missouri, and yes, she died. And Michael, we don't even know the real circumstances of her death. So these are all very faded, accounts that's really hard to pin down. Some accounts say that she, died at the same time they had a new child or while she was pregnant. But here's the weird thing, and tell me if I'm getting too far into this.
No.
But the weird thing is that, and a former scholar pointed this out, there was a newspaper in Lamar, and there is no record in the paper about her death. And there's even a dispute over where she's actually buried. The only cemetery in Lamar was called East Cemetery or East Side Cemetery. There was no marker for her originally. And then another account said she was buried at another cemetery some 8 miles from town, which makes no sense. But, since the town had its own newspaper, it's very odd that there's no reference to the wife of the constable dying, and if she had a child, the wife and child. So it's a mystery, but the family lore is strong, and we do have the marriage certificate. We know he was married in Lamar by his father, who was the justice of the peace.
Yes.
But there's no actual record of her death other than the family accounts.
Okay. Well, somehow I had in the back of my head that around the time of her death, that her family was not happy with Wyatt Earp's behavior, and I'm not sure because I've read so much over the years. But
Sure, there isn't that account's there. In fact, there was even one account says they were in a bit of a fight with her brothers or something like that. But I don't have that in my book because it just wasn't something that I could verify.
Do you have in your book that because this is something also that's just in my brain, and I get the books mixed up and all the information mixed up, that there's, if you're married, you have a wife, she dies during, trying to give birth, whatever reason, and you bury her, it's your wife, you might want to buy a gravestone for your wife. Was that not
yes,
in your book?
I mentioned that in my book.
Okay.
That he, as I say in my book, he becomes a ghost after she dies.
Yeah.
He disappears. He takes the tax monies that he had collected from a couple of circuses that had appeared at Lamar. But yeah, it's like, wouldn't you? It just seems odd that you would not make a stone or a marker of some kind for your wife. And it wasn't until decades later that an Earp relative actually made a marker out of concrete and put it in the cemetery in Lamar. And we don't even know if that's the right location, if she's indeed buried there. But yeah, he left town owing money to the county, and no, and then he would never talk about his wife. Years later, when he was interviewed, he wouldn't talk about that time in Lamar.
Well,
in fact, here's the thing, Michael.
Go ahead.
When Stuart Lake was researching his biography of Wyatt Earp wrote his cousin George Earp and told him, don't tell Stuart Lake anything about Lamar or his time in Lamar. So he was very secretive about that period of his life.
Well, he would be somewhat secretive because of the money that he stole.
Yes.
And what was the word, absconded with,
yes.
Left with. It sounded to me like his father also was sort of debt-ridden, and
yes.
You suggest, Mark, don't you, that Wyatt might have been pilfering that money even before the death of his wife?
Yes, and one theory is that his father was in debt, and maybe the reason that Wyatt didn't have the tax monies was that he ended up, giving that to his dad to help pay off debts. But when the district attorney brought suit against the sureties, because when you become a constable, you have to put up a bond.
Yeah.
And I can't remember how much it was, but the district attorney brought suit against these sureties. And of course, Nicholas was one, and Wyatt's uncle was another. Yeah. And in his lawsuit charges, he mentioned that that Nicholas Earp was getting ready to leave town, and sure enough, Nicholas Earp did leave town and leaving those debts behind, which was a bit of a pattern
for the Earps. Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
I said let's. We can pick this up again, but let's go to the gunfight, just because that's the biggest thing that everybody really wants to kind of hear about. And I wanted to mention some facts. It's the way that I see them, is the way that I've researched them, and Jim have researched them, and I want you to talk to me about whether they're true or not, okay? And that is that are you aware that the McLaury brothers were in town to maybe pick up money that was owed them? They were getting ready to leave to go to see their sister's wedding.
Yes, I am aware of that.
Okay, so are you also aware, or am I right? When I say are you aware, I'm basically am I right in saying the McLaury brothers, from what I have always been able to find out about them, have never been arrested, there's no proof of them ever being in jail in Tombstone or anywhere that they ever worked, and maybe hung out more with the cowboys than other people, but they weren't outlaws.
Well, so I would disagree
Okay.
with that. I mean, as far as never being arrested, I think you're right. They never were actually arrested or placed in jail. Here's the problem. Apparently their ranches served as fences for these stolen cattle that were being rustled by the cowboys, and so they were involved in transferring this stolen property, the cattle. But the biggest indictment against them would be these mules that were stolen from the army. This happens, before the OK Corral gunfight. And there's a posse formed to track down these mules. The posse included civilians as well as some members of the military, the U.S. Army. There was a lieutenant, and he had a few men with him. So in the posse was Virgil Earp, who is the deputy U.S. Marshal for that area. And Wyatt Earp is with Virgil. And then these officers, they traced the mules to the McLaury Ranch outside, not far from Tombstone. And Wyatt Earp and Virgil Earp, they're really encouraging the lieutenant, let's go in and get these mules, And what they had learned was that the McLaurys and whoever was working with them, they were changing the brand. They were rebranding it from US to the letters DS. That's how they were changing it.
Yeah.
The lieutenant is, he's hesitant to go in. He doesn't want to get into a fight. And so they get a message to the McLaury brothers. They say, just bring the mules in 2 days. I'll be waiting for him here at Charleston, and bring him in, and we'll just forget the whole thing. And apparently the McLaury brothers agree to do that. Well, they just are waiting until the Earp brothers are gone, and then they're laughing about it and say, we're not bringing these mules in. And so the lieutenant in Tombstone, he's mad, and he puts a reward notice in the newspaper, and he's naming the McLaurys as the people that are involved in this theft of the mules. And this is the first big blow up between the McLaurys and the Earps. And, I guess it was Frank McLaury. He confronts Virgil Earp in Tombstone and accuses him of having something to do with the reward notice, which he said he didn't. That was the lieutenant's. But this is the first thing that kind of, they're butting heads over.
The first real blow up between them, isn't it?
Yes,
the first meeting
exactly.
really between them.
Yes. But you're right, Michael. I mean, there are people that are supporting the McLaurys and other cowboys and saying, oh, they're upstanding citizens, they're ranchers, they've never done anything wrong. But it's known that they're associates of the cowboys, and their ranches are places the cowboys are visiting, and again helping them to fence stolen cattle. That's
and I understand that, but by the crimes of the day, holding on to cattle and letting them fatten up on your ranch, knowing that it might be stolen cattle, it's not, in those days, it doesn't seem like it. And the fact that they never were arrested. And during this situation, is this where somebody, because there's an article in both newspapers where somebody blames or the McLaury brothers or Frank McLaury for claims that he did something wrong, and McLaury writes back. Do you know of what I'm talking? Yes. Can you explain that
he
for
answers,
us? Is that this
it,
case that you're talking?
Yes, it's that case. It's an answer to that reward notice that appears and names him in the paper. But Michael, you're right. I mean, if that was the only thing that happened, because they don't have this gunfight right after this incident. I mean, there's many other things, a chain of events,
a lot of intervening events. That's almost for the gunfight.
Jim, what do you remember what Frank McLaury, what he said, and or maybe you can help us out here, Mark, too, about something about his name had never been associated with thievery or something like that? That he wrote
Well,
in the newspaper?
He was pretty indignant at being
Yes.
associated with this, and he wrote this kind of angry letter to the editor in this paper. But
There was
a
sentence or a word that he
well,
used.
and he complained about the Earps being there. He said something about citizens, and I think he was kind of wary of the Earps from the start. Am I correct in that, Mark?
Yes, and as we said, there's other confrontations that happen between the McLaurys and the Earps that precede the gunfight. But Michael, as you said, this episode, this really pits them against one another, and it's also the politics. I mean, the McLaurys are Democrats, the Earps are Republicans, so they're on different sides of the political spectrum. And also, we know that the McLaurys are associating with the Clantons. And the Clantons, Ike Clanton is believed to be a leader of the Cowboys. So it's kind of by association, we're already seeing this divide between the Earps, who are newcomers to the Tombstone area, and the Cowboys, who don't have a good reputation, except, with people that they're dealing with. And, as Virgil Earp points out, when the Cowboys come to town, they're spending lots of money at the saloons.
They're good for business.
And they're helping business in Tombstone. So there are a lot of defenders of the Cowboys. But
and there was a big demand for beef.
Yes.
And that's what made the rustling so lucrative. And as I recall, a lot of the rustling was from Mexico. And that was almost forgivable. If it was Mexican cattle, then who cares? That was sort of the attitude. So that was almost like not even a crime at all. It's when they were rustling from American ranchers that things could get a little tense.
And it wasn't just cattle; it was also horses and mules.
And mules, definitely mules.
And these happen to be these belong to the U.S. Army, which it's kind of funny. You'd think if you stole from the U.S. Army that they would go right out and get them, but it didn't turn out that way.
No, they did more or less get away with stealing from the Army.
Yes, they did. No, the Army never got their mules.
The Army never sold the mules. The McLaury brothers, sounds to me like they said when they showed up, okay, yeah, we'll give them back to you tomorrow, and then didn't. That doesn't really prove that they ever even had them, does it?
Well,
really?
I guess. I mean, they trailed them to their ranch, but I don't know that they ever saw the.
I don't think the McLaurys were even there at that first encounter, were they?
I don't know. I really don't know how they got the message to them on their ranch. I don't know if they, my impression is that they did not enter the ranch because the lieutenant did not want to get into a fight.
A ruckus with.
Yes.
Okay, but so there's really no proof one way or another whether they stole the mules or not.
I guess not. Yeah.
Or we're just allowing. I mean,
I'm always going to be the defense attorney for the McLaurys and the Clantons, and those other. I'm a cowboy, so
I was just a misunderstood guy.
Well, one of the things that it just came into my mind, and it's kind of portrayed in the film that I did, but. When you talk about the McLaury brothers and Ike's brother also, when they were buried and when they had their funeral, that, from what I understand, is the largest turnout of people at any funeral in the history of Tombstone. Are you aware of that?
You're probably correct on that. I mean, I'm not a Tombstone historian for later years, but yeah, it was an incredible turnout of people, and it was quite a procession. I mean, they had the town's brass band, they had these, a very elaborate, horse-drawn carriages. But I will say at the same time, Michael, that there was a woman reporter for a California newspaper, and I quote her, and she found it really shocking. She said, "Why is there such a turnout for these individuals who are considered rustlers and criminals?" And she found that very hard to understand. And the way I write about it in the book, or at least my take on it is that, yes, the Cowboys, they had their supporters, but I think the townspeople were just done with this kind of violence. I mean, the gunfight was a string of violent encounters on the streets of Tombstone. And I think that was their way of saying, enough of this. We don't
Enough
want,
already.
yeah, we don't want
Yeah.
gunfights in the street anymore. So I see it that way. But
When Wyatt and his brothers, were there gunfights in the streets then? When Wyatt was a
yes,
Wyatt
Well,
was,
there was
Wyatt was
gunplay for
never
sure.
involved in one, was he?
no, he wasn't. But there were other killings.
Was his brother ever involved in one?
No, but
No.
Doc Holliday was. That was in a saloon, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Was that in Tombstone? Was that
yes,
it?
in Tombstone.
Yeah.
But there were people that were getting killed, and
Well,
one of the people I quote a lot was a diarist. His name, he was a miner who kept a diary, and he really recounted these different episodes, and usually they were these testosterone fueled fights between gamblers, or there was one
Drunk.
gunfight that was over a shirt.
I
This
read that,
individual,
yeah.
he had a shirt that was unusual. It was like a checkered shirt, and people were making fun of it. And he kept getting drunk. And he said, the next person that says something about my shirt's going to get it. And this friend of his came up, unbeknownst to what was going on with the shirt, and just complimented him on it. He hauled off and hit him. Well, his friend went home and got a gun.
Yep.
And when he confronted his friend about, why did you hit me? Well, he hit him again, and then this time the guy shot him and killed him.
Right, four or five
that.
times
Sure.
too. Shot him once and then went and finished him off like
Yes, exactly,
gangster
yeah.
style, right?
Yeah, it wasn't just one. No, he went up and shot him 2 more times.
Yeah.
And then there was a shooting with Luke Short and a gambler named Charlie Storms, and they had a gunfight in the street, and so
And Curly Bill shot and killed
Yes.
Fred White, who was he a marshal or the sheriff?
he was
What
the marshal. He was the
yeah.
marshal of Tombstone. And this is the thing, Jim and Mike. A lot of people don't realize this, but there was an anti-gun law in Tombstone.
Yeah.
And all these boom towns had anti-gun laws because of these incidents. I mean, they tried to disarm cowboys or whoever it was, gamblers or what have you. That was to prevent these kinds of killings, which were much too frequent. And that's one of the things that sets off the gunfight at the OK Corral, or one of the reasons behind Virgil Earp going down there. It's like, he had told Sheriff Bean, Sheriff Bean had agreed to disarm him. And he says, tell them, just get their guns. That's all I want. Just take their guns while they're in town. And that sets off this gunfight because they're going down there to disarm these men who are carrying weapons.
They're basically going down there to enforce a gun control law.
Exactly. Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, so the day of the gunfight,
Yes.
Ike Clanton is arrested early in the morning, correct, or late in the evening, and he is thrown in jail because he's drunk and he's running around talking about how he's going to kill the Earps and screaming and threatening, which
Making all kinds of threats.
yeah,
Yes.
making all kinds of threats, which I don't know if that's against the law. I've heard a lot of people make a lot of threats in a lot of bars that were just drunk, and Ike Clanton, I don't think had really the reputation of a gunfighter. I think that, he was drunk and running around. So anyway, they throw him in jail. He bails himself out, and then
he's not, Michael, he's not thrown in jail. He's just taken to court, and he's fined for having the weapons, not for the threats. He's fined for carrying the weapons in Tombstone.
Correct. I'm sorry. Then what happens is it Tom McLaury that gets
Wyatt confronts?
Yes.
And buffaloes on the head. Yeah,
Yes.
popped him on the head.
Can you
Yeah.
explain to me, if you have any more knowledge than we do, what's that all about, other than what's been described in books that are kind of like whatever, that Wyatt just happened to be in a bad mood?
Well, I should just start just going a little earlier. So in that courtroom, Wyatt is there. They're waiting for the judge to show up. So Wyatt is there.
Is it Spicer?
Yes,
The same judge?
yes, I believe it's Spicer.
Yeah.
And Morgan's there also. Morgan has Ike's guns, and Ike is there, and they start getting into an argument, and Ike starts spouting off, and he says, you guys have treated me like a dog, and he said, if you would come a little bit later or whatever. The coroner would have had another report to fill out. And then Wyatt gets angry and says, "You've been threatening us, for a long time. I'm sick of it. It's going to end." And then Ike says, "Give me my guns. All I want is 4 feet of ground." I mean, it gets very heated.
Yeah.
And then Morgan says, "Okay, here they are." And of course, the what do you call the guy in the courtroom? The
bailiff, yeah,
or somebody like that. He
yeah.
steps in and he says, "We're not going to have that." But in the meantime, all the people in the courtroom have fled because it looks like this fight's going to break out. So anyway, that gets settled down. But Wyatt, he's fed up and he leaves. Well, the first person he encounters, is Ike Clanton's buddy, Tom McLaury.
Okay.
And Tom McLaury saying something like, "We're going to fight," or "Do you want to fight?" And Wyatt, says, "Hey,
are you who said that? That's what he said.
Tom McLaury."
Yeah, who said that Tom McLaury said he was going to fight, or
somebody? There's some witness. This is all in the later testimony that we have after the gunfight. But Wyatt's response is, "If you want to fight, we can have it right now." And so Wyatt immediately pulls a gun out of his coat pocket and slams it into Tom McLaury's head. And of course, that stuns Tom McLaury. I mean,
which would be assault, correct?
Yes,
that's assault.
Yes,
that is assault, and that's something that he should have gone to jail for. That's nothing more than assault. Two guys get in an argument, you pull out a weapon. Assault with a deadly weapon, considering it was a gun, not even used that way. But if you hit somebody over the head with a crowbar or with a big wrench, that's assault with a deadly weapon, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So this is before the gunfight.
Yes.
So
Wyatt, and this does add to the tension before the gunfight. But yeah, Wyatt, it causes, if I remember correctly, he's bleeding from his left ear after Wyatt hits him. It definitely took the fight out of Tom McLaury. But yeah, if you want to look at it in a legal sense, Wyatt did commit a crime by assaulting Tom McLaury, and it does not sit well with Tom's brother.
And it's definitely a provocation. You can see it as a provocation for sure.
Yeah.
And another interesting thing about all of this is that these people were tired. Most of them had been involved in an all-night poker game.
Yes.
At one point or another.
I didn't get any sleep at all. I mean, he was drinking. He was drinking and making threats all night long. I mean, early in the morning,
he was fuming. He was working
a big
himself
altercation with Doc Holliday because and Michael, this story, and Jimmy do too. I mean, Wyatt had a deal with Ike to capture the Benson stage robbers, and Ike, the story, Ike felt like Wyatt had broken his promise to keep it secret, and he thought that Doc knew about it and was talking about it. And so Ike's accusing Doc, he's accusing Wyatt, and Doc and Ike get in a big fight the night before the gunfight or in the early morning hours, and they're both
a big
drunk.
talky fight. They're both drunk, yelling at each other, calling each other names.
Cursing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, Doc got to the point where he said, Ike would say, "Well, I'm not armed," and Doc said, "Well, if you're not healed, go get healed." I mean, it's all big talk that's going on.
Yes.
The difference is that Doc and Wyatt go to bed. Ike doesn't go to bed. He literally stays up all night and into the morning.
Well, gee, I wouldn't know what that was like. I just mean, like, okay, well, he didn't. He felt like he decided to keep drinking, but
he's asking for in the morning, or no, before he goes to bed, he confronts Virgil. He says, "Would you take a message to Doc?" And Virgil says, "Well, what's the message?" He says, "I want to see him. He's got to fight." And Virgil says, "I'm not going to take him that." The thing about it is those guys, Wyatt Earp has said this. It's in the testimony, and Virgil,
can I stop you before?
Sure.
You're talking about Wyatt's testimony. Okay. You're talking about Wyatt's testimony in the inquiry, correct?
And also the testimony of other people that saw these interactions.
Okay.
But yes, go ahead with Wyatt.
Right. So, first of all, to me, the inquiry was just as unfair as the gunfight, because during the inquiry, the Earps and Doc Holliday were able to make a statement. This is our lawyer. They're all lawyered up by the Wells Fargo's lawyers. They're all lawyered up. they make a statement, they all agree on the statement, and they're not allowed to be cross-examined, correct? So anything he says in the inquiry, they can cross-examine Ike, they can cross-examine Johnny Bean, they can cross-examine the other way, but the prosecutors weren't allowed to cross-examine the defendants. They just made a statement, correct?
That was only with Wyatt's testimony. And that was a weird thing with the Arizona law that you were, and again, this is a hearing. It's not a trial.
No,
it's a
I
hearing
know.
to see if there would be a trial.
I know.
And so according to the Arizona territorial law, you were allowed to submit a written statement, which Wyatt did. But you also should remember that Virgil did not submit a written statement, and he was allowed to be cross-examined, which he was. And his story wasn't much different than Wyatt's. And the odd thing about all of this is that there's two people that weren't called to testify. Doc Holliday was not called to testify. And we know he was there because there's an account of him taking notes during the hearing. The other person who wasn't called, who supposedly was an eyewitness, was Kate Elder, a Big Nose Kate. So that's unusual. But you're absolutely right, Michael. Wyatt submitted a written statement, and they could not cross-examine him. So
okay, and for anybody that is listening to this, the idea that, like with Lake's book or whoever that guy was, Wyatt Earp seems to me like the biggest bullshitter, the biggest liar of anybody that in this, out of everybody, out of all the characters that we're talking about in Tombstone. Wyatt Earp seems to me the guy that lies the most and is. But anyway, this goes back to Wyatt Earp claiming. I think that you said they'd gotten into some sort of a altercation. Wyatt Earp claimed that he said something to him, so he smashes him over the head or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes.
So when the Cowboys are near the OK Corral, we know it's not exactly in the OK Corral. They're in the OK Corral, but they're really those laws about the guns and so that was mostly for partying and people at night. And I know it was a law that probably they enforced during the day, but it was mostly for rowdy, drunken nights that they didn't want people to have guns on them. At this particular time, and this particular morning, the McLaury brothers were trying or about ready to leave town to head toward their sister's wedding. Is that correct?
Well, no. I mean, ultimately, but here's what happened. So Johnny Bean, when he approaches the Earps and Doc Holliday and says he's already disarmed them, which he had not disarmed them, what he could have said was that they're leaving town. Because if you're leaving town, you can take your guns with you.
Yeah,
but weren't they leaving town?
Well, according to the testimony, and Johnny Bean, he went down there and asked for their guns, but they said they weren't ready to leave town yet. So whether they had additional business or whatever, but the suspicious thing is in this situation, why are they hanging out next to Doc Holliday's room? That empty lot is right next to the boarding house. And Ike had made threats he was going to kill Doc Holliday. He was looking for Doc Holliday. So that's very suspicious. If you have other things to do, why are you gathered here?
Well, yeah. Well, they might be gathered there, but Ike was there, and Ike was the one that made the threat, and Ike didn't have a gun, did he?
That is correct. He did not have a gun.
All right, so I'm the defense attorney for the Cowboys.
Who's the jury, by the way? Who's going to
really.
decide this outcome?
We're going to have a vote among those.
Yeah. That's right.
Okay, so all right, so they're down there. I was always under the impression that they had come into town to collect some money for beef because one of the brothers was found with $4,000 on him, and they were getting ready to leave town. And if you're leaving town, you can have your guns. But according to Johnny Bean, he asked for their guns, and he said, no, we're not leaving yet, and we want to,
didn't they agree to turn over their guns if Wyatt would disarm as well?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
and Wyatt had just beaten one of them over the
Wyatt
head
had
with
just
his
conked
gun.
one of them
So,
over the
I mean,
head,
it kind of makes sense that
they
you
said,
would.
well, why should
You
we
wouldn't want to
disarm
give
if
up your
he's-
guns to a guy who just smashed you and your buddy over the head with
I'm
a
not giving up mine until he gives
Yeah.
up his.
Right.
Was the way I understood it. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I bring another witness in to help me out here? I think it's 2 against 1 right now.
No.
No.
Well, so all right. So they're near the corrals,
Yes.
the OK Corral, and I would think that they'd be near the corral because they're getting ready to get on their horses and leave town. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, there are 2 horses with them at the time that this encounter happens, and one belonged to Billy Clanton. I think the other was
Frank's, wasn't it?
Frank's horse. Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
And also, they're right next to a gun shop, aren't they? And
Well, that happens. That's about a block away, and that
Okay.
incident happens earlier
a
where.
little earlier though. But they were in the gun shop.
Yes, they were in
loading
the
up,
gun shop. They see him, loading. Supposedly, see him loading ammunition to their gun belts, which is, if you're at a gun shop, you're buying ammunition.
Yeah, exactly.
But but again, one of the, I guess I can't remember whose horse it was standing on the boardwalk, and so Wyatt, who's been appointed a special policeman by Virgil, he goes over to take the horse off the boardwalk, and they exchange some steely glares with one another, but nothing happens at that point. And but that does precede and Ike is in there as well. In fact, in that gun shop episode, Ike is trying to get a gun from the gun shop owner, and the gun shop owner, he sees this bloody bandage around Ike's head, and that he's in pretty poor shape, and it's
And
like,
he's
no,
drunk,
I'm not giving you a gun.
You're the
okay. All right. Well, here's the way that I describe the gunfight, and is that there are 3 Earp brothers, all armed. Okay, and there is Doc Holliday, also armed and holding the Wells Fargo shotgun. Okay, so there's 4 guys and 6 weapons. Wait, 4 guys and 5 weapons because he's got. So they give him the shotgun supposedly because he couldn't shoot that well. They go down to confront the Cowboys, and this is the way that I understand it. We know Ike didn't have a gun, and one of the McLaury brothers does not have a gun. Is that the way that you?
Well, that's disputed. Tom is said to have had a gun and actually fired his gun, but there was no gun found near his body. And there's different theories. They believe maybe the sheriff had picked the gun up or somebody had picked the gun up. But there is testimony from the witnesses that Tom McLaury was shooting with the revolver over the back of his horse. But no gun as evidence was found with Tom. So that's a bone of contention or disputed. But we know that Frank had a gun and Billy Clanton had a gun.
Okay, so what we know is that 2 of them had guns.
For sure,
and
yes.
And it's disputed whether the other brother had a gun or not.
Yes, it's disputed whether Tom had one or not. But there were witnesses. Michael, they called 30 witnesses over a month's time at this Spicer hearing, and there's a lot of conflicting, contradictory testimony. Some of it depending on which side you were on. Some people had amnesia, as I say in the book. Like Clanton had a little amnesia. So did Johnny Bean. But no, to get back to your point, we know for sure that Frank and Billy Clanton, had revolvers, and it's suspected, there's testimony that Tom did, but no weapon was found later, and we don't know what happened to that weapon.
Okay. All right. I didn't know that. So I've always described the gunfight as 5 guns against 2, and the fight, was taken to the Cowboys. It wasn't like the Cowboys were out looking for the Earps. It wasn't like the Earp, like it sounded. My feelings, and please tell me why I'm wrong or what the different circumstances might have been. Is you've got the group of what we call cowboys that are getting at a stable, kind of getting ready to leave town, getting money that is owed from them in town, still fighting with the Earps a little bit, but they're going off to their sister's wedding. They have no thoughts of like being involved in any gunfight. And here comes 4 guys armed to the teeth and say, throw up your arms, or we're here for your arms, whatever he says. And the gunfight breaks out. And it just seems to me that, like, you know, one side is startled, the other side goes down there like, we're gonna go fucking.
Well, and if you're gonna try to calm things down, it seems like the last person you would bring with you is Doc Holliday, and give him a shotgun, and say, Doc, we're gonna go disarm these people. Here, you take the shotgun.
Well,
what do you expect?
Yeah, Doc Holliday, you know, he's like another brother to these guys. I mean, Doc didn't have a brother or sister when he was growing up, and he really latched on to this clan, and they thought of him the same way. But I don't believe Doc Holliday was drunk at that time of day. He had just gotten up his sleep just a short time before. As far as you know, Virgil, they've been receiving these. I mean, they're not just, you know, mild threats like we're going to get you or whatever. I mean, several people went up to Virgil for an hour before this fight, saying, "Look out! You know, we keep hearing them say they're going to kill the marshal. You know, they're after these guys." And of course, this whole time, it's increasingly irritating Virgil that these individuals have their guns against the law. So it's a combination, I think, of all the threats and them breaking the law, that he decides if they're going to continue to flaunt their weapons, you know, we're going to go down there and take their guns away. And that's all there is to it. And so that's what causes this whole thing to happen, is that he's going and he's taking backup to disarm these individuals. And that's where he meets, you know, Sheriff Bean, who says, I've disarmed all of them, you know, because the first thing he says to Bean, who looks scared, I mean, he keeps looking back to that lot. He's approaching the Earps and Holliday, and he says, don't go down there. They're going to murder you or whatever. And he says, I'm here to take their weapons. And then Bean says, I've already taken their weapons. And then that causes the Earps, they kind of relax, you know. Virgil says that he shifts his gun around to his left hip. He puts his cane in his right hand, Doc Holliday's cane. Wyatt Earp said he put his gun back into his coat pocket. So they weren't expecting to have to fight, if we believe their testimony, which it sounds like you don't. So anyway,
I don't believe anything that Wyatt Earp says, because he's a known liar, and that book that he wrote with whoever that guy was is just full of lies. Right. Yeah, and him and all his whore wives, but especially the last one, you know, you know, you know, she's lying about her past, and he's lying about like Peoria, and hey, like you said earlier, don't talk about this and don't talk about that. No, we
didn't find out about Peoria till, you know, a few years ago, and White didn't talk about those things. I mean, you know, you know, in fairness, I wouldn't talk about those things either to my biographer. I would. You know, I wouldn't mention these unsavory aspects. You would mention
the fact that you were a pimp and that you were arrested. Exactly. And not only were you I saw it in your book, and I forget the word you used, but not only was he a pimp, but he was not a very good pimp. And the women were described as kind of like not fed well, or like what's the word you use?
What I say in the book, it was an uneven relationship. I mean, you kind of, you know, you would live off the earnings of your prostitute wife, or
that's what pimps do.
Yeah, if you're a
Wyatt,
gambler,
that's what you do. That's what pimps do, Wyatt. Yeah,
yeah. And if you're a gambler, you know, you're running short. You know, big nose. I need to, and he did that. We know that he took $75 and lost it at a faro table in Tucson. So it wasn't. Yeah, it was an uneven relationship these individuals had with the women. But anyway, but I will say, in defense of Wyatt Earp, I feel like I have to defend him a little bit. You know, as a lawman, and in places like Dodge City,
and how long was he? I'm sorry to interrupt. Just okay. But Jim,
go ahead.
As far as you're concerned, Jim, how many years was Wyatt Earp a lawman in Dodge City and Tombstone? And
well, if you add it all together, I don't think it's a whole lot more than 6 or 7 years, is it?
It's a very short time. Yes.
yeah, okay,
Yeah,
so
of the close to 80 years
describing
that he
him
was
as a
alive.
lawman is like describing me as a lawman because I played one in a few movies. No,
well,
I'm joking,
I'll say
but
this.
Anyway, go
so
ahead.
In this,
Go
we
ahead. I'm
refer to
sorry.
this- we're talking about the Spicer hearing. The city leaders of, and there were dozens of these in both Wichita and Dodge City, they sent letters to Tombstone attesting to Wyatt's time as a lawman in those towns. And I have to say, Michael, that even if you read the contemporary newspaper reports, they're always praising Wyatt's job as a lawman, as a police officer in both Wichita and Dodge City. I'll give you an example. I have it in the book. And it's interesting that these things that are in the papers and they're newsworthy. So Wyatt Earp arrested a man who was drunk in Wichita.
Did he walk up behind him and beat him over the head with his gun and knock him?
That was one technique, but not in this particular case.
Not in this particular case. I was going against the way that he usually did business. Go ahead.
Standard operating procedure. Yeah.
But Michael, I will say that that's better than killing him. Knocking him out.
I'm just saying it wasn't like the way that the police officers that I'm aware police officers act now. They don't.
No, they don't. If the police officer sees you with a gun today, they shoot you. They don't go up and hit you.
Come on. Yeah. Come on.
Anyway, so in Wichita, he arrests this man who's drunk and disorderly or what have you, and he had a $500 roll of bills on him. And Wyatt, kept the money. And when the guy's released and pays his fine, he gives him the $500. And the Wichita paper comments like, hey, we got a great police force here. And other towns,
what, they don't steal money?
Yeah.
They don't take money off their prisoners? Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, and in the Dodge City is the same thing. They're always praising Wyatt Earp in his abilities as a police officer. And you're absolutely right. His way of disarming drunken and disorderly people was to hit them over the head. And it was a very dangerous occupation to be a law officer in these towns that had these anti-gun laws, because the way they disarmed them was to physically disarm them. It wasn't like today where you're off at a distance of 100 yards and drop your weapon. Wyatt Earp went up to him and physically. And this is what happens, Michael. Lawmen are getting killed. Bat Masterson's brother was killed in Dodge City disarming a cowboy, and Marshal Fred White in Tombstone was killed trying to disarm Curly Bill Brocious. Yep. So I have, Wyatt was, as Bat Masterson said, Wyatt was the bravest man he ever knew. And it was because of these incidents in Dodge City and Wichita where he demonstrated that bravery. He physically disarmed individuals with weapons, and not at a distance, close up.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get to the inquiry, because I just and again the way that I'm just going to state my position one last time. The way that I see it is 4 guns and 4 people and 5 guns taking the fight to 4 people with 2 guns, possibly 3. Correct? And
both horses had Winchesters in their saddle scabbards.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're not out. They're in the scabbards.
Yeah. Well, yes, but
but they were never used. They were never deployed.
Yeah, and that's even depicted in Tombstone. I think that he's trying to reach in and get his gun out. I think that Kevin Jarr felt like there were only 2 that were. One of the McLaury brothers was trying to reach in to get the rifle out. And that's Kevin Jarr, and he was pretty smart guy. So what happens is, instead of everybody going like, yay, you killed the bad guys, yay, Wyatt Earp and the Earp brothers, you killed the bad guys, they're like called off to jail, right? Eventually.
Not initially.
Well,
not initially.
How later was the inquiry after the gunfight?
Well, the inquiry starts on October 31st. The gunfight was October 26th. And what happens is that Ike presses or makes a formal complaint with the courts or with the legal authority against the Earps and Doc Holliday for murder. And that's what brings about the Spicer hearing, because it was Judge Spicer that was in charge. And that happens October 31st is when that starts. And it lasts for a full month.
It lasted a month. I mean, that's extraordinary. It's almost like a trial.
Yes. I mean, it's very much
of the length and the duration. And one of the interesting factoids about it is that the McLaury brothers had a brother in Texas who was a lawyer.
Yes.
And he came to town to be on the prosecuting side.
Yes.
He had the brother
he assists the prosecution.
Would you agree with Jim and I that the inquiry was based on a first-degree murder charge, and that might have been an overcharge as compared to a manslaughter charge?
I'm not sure what the charge that Ike pressed. I'm assuming it was murder, but I don't know.
It was murder, and the brother, the attorney brother, Will, really pressed for murder rather than any lesser charge.
Yes, and what happens is, I mean, and like you said, Jim, this is like unheard of. A hearing, it's a hearing. It's not really a trial yet.
Yeah.
And it's 30 witnesses are called. And some of them are called, like 2 days in a row. I mean, Virgil Earp gave testimony to over 2 different days. But I
think Ike testified twice, didn't he?
Oh yeah. Not only did he testify, but he also there was a coroner's inquest.
Yeah.
And there was testimony taken at that before the actual hearing. So yes, Ike's testifying in both those. But it's highly irregular to have that kind of a hearing. But what's great about it, and what we have fun talking about, is that this stuff was transcribed, right?
Yes.
And there's a bit of a controversy about that, because apparently the original records were found in Bisbee at the courthouse. And during the WPA, one of the projects was to transcribe these. Well, the person that transcribed them apparently didn't do them exactly, and put a little of his own
editorializing.
But also we have both newspapers, the Nugget, which was the Cowboy supporter, and the Epitaph, which supported the Earps. They also printed the testimony. And so when you're examining this, you have to really look at all 3 of those. And not all the papers are available with the Nugget. Some of their accounts were published in other newspapers in Arizona. So you have to really look at all those different things. But that's what's great, is because of this hearing that lasted for a month, we have all this information that we have to sift through and figure out, well, how does this make sense? And is somebody telling the truth here and or not? And it makes it a really fun exploration.
And I believe Doc and Wyatt were jailed for about half that time, weren't they?
Yes. So what happens is that Will McLaury, you mentioned him, he's really upset that these guys are walking the streets. And not only are they walking the streets, but they're carrying guns. And so he presses Judge Spicer. He says, listen, these guys should be in jail. We're trying them for murder. And at that point in the hearing, it was not looking good for the Earps. It looked like this was a grudge killing because of the testimony.
It was a grudge killing.
So they're thrown back in jail for a short time. But then
3 weeks. With 3 weeks, wasn't that how long they were in? 3 weeks.
I can't remember.
I think it was closer to 2.
Okay,
like 2 weeks, maybe. About half the time.
But anyway, the testimony starts coming in that ends up supporting the Earps version of the affair, and so they're released. And one of the worst witnesses was Johnny Bean, because he apparently went, that night to see Virgil, who's in bed from his wound, and he tells Virgil, the assistant prosecutor is in the same room, and he hears Johnny Bean talk with Virgil, and Virgil said, "Didn't you hear me say for them to hold up their hands and I want your guns?" And Johnny Bean admits that he did, and Johnny Bean also said, "I think you did right, Virgil."
Yeah.
And later that guy that's working for the prosecution has to testify that he heard Johnny Bean say that you did right.
You were in the right.
Yeah. So Johnny Bean was a better witness for the defense than he was the prosecution.
Well, that's surprising, since Wyatt Earp came into town gunning for his job and his woman.
And that's, Michael, that's another reason behind all this tension. Some people argue that Johnny Bean really wanted to see Wyatt Earp go to jail or hang or
Oh, I'm
whatever
sure he
because
did.
yeah, he saw Wyatt as going to be competition, and the next election would have been November of 1882. So he wanted Wyatt out of the way. Now, some historians have argued that Johnny Bean wanted the fight. I don't think that's the case. I don't think Johnny Bean wanted this fight to occur because he did run up to him, and
Johnny Bean apparently never wanted a fight of any kind. He
No.
usually was
Oh, that's
walking
right, yeah.
going the other direction. He was
yes,
more or
exactly.
less labeled a coward, wasn't he, for the
Yes,
most part?
but
Yeah.
but anyway, but yeah, there and Johnny Bean had animosity towards Doc Holliday as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, so there's a lot of tension between all these different groups, which makes it so interesting. And I know they play up on some of that in the
I
movies
think
as well.
I think one of the things I found most surprising in reading about Tombstone was how much Wyatt wanting Johnny's job really motivated things.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and
yes.
how much his scheming to get that job, even though he may have left Dodge City saying there's no money in it,
Mm-hmm.
in being in law anymore. I'm going to go, off to Arizona and make my fortune there. once he got to Arizona and realized that the sheriff was able to collect taxes and keep 10%, and that the sheriff of Tombstone was going to in for a lot of money because of the mines and the railroads
Yes.
nearby. That's a job to have. And in fact, Johnny Bean was pulling in close to $40,000 a year
Yes,
in
it was
1881 dollars.
Oh yeah, it was a filthy rich kind of money.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's here's the other thing too, Jim. The county sheriff not only collected the taxes, but he was also the tax assessor. So it was a pretty good job.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, there was supposedly an agreement between the two of them at the
Yes.
start that Wyatt would be the muscle, and Johnny Bean would be sort of the politician side of being a sheriff, and that they would split the tax proceeds. And Johnny Bean, I think, realized that he didn't really particularly want the Earps in his
No,
team.
and that's the other thing that's fascinating about this story is all these deals that are happening.
Yeah.
Johnny Bean's making a deal with Earp, and then Earp's making a deal with Ike. Also, Earp made a deal with the Cowboys to help Curly Bill, get out of jail after, or
lynching. Yeah.
There's all these deals, and of course to me that just fits his whole gambler persona,
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, because you're taking a chance. I mean, the fact that Earp would even want to negotiate with the Cowboys is risky.
Well, there's you have a scene in here where he gets Frank and Ike and a couple other people, Wyatt does, to try to help him catch these stage robbers.
Yes.
And the reason he wants to catch them is because he wants the glory.
Exactly.
From that. He tells these guys, look, Wells Fargo has put up a big load of money for reward for these guys. You can have all the reward money. All I want is the glory of catching them. And he basically enlists Ike Clanton to help him do that.
Yes. And Ike even testified that in addition to the reward, he said that Wyatt offered an additional $1,000 to get his help. So in the end, it didn't work out the way Wyatt had planned. But yeah,
you're going to use Ike Clanton as a confidential informant. My gosh, what could go wrong with that?
Yeah. And here's the ironic or funny thing. So Ike was terrified that this deal was going to go public. Well, guess what happens in the hearing? We all learn about this deal.
It goes public.
Yeah. So.
Well, I just wanted to say, I said it earlier in the conversation, but I just wanted to say it one more time. During the inquiry, which Judge Spicer decided there wasn't enough evidence to charge them with what I understand was first-degree murder, and that he was probably overcharged. The prosecution and the prosecution witnesses were able to be cross-examined. The defense could make all the statements they want. Is this the same also with his brother?
No, it was Wyatt was the only one that submitted written testimony and was not cross-examined.
Okay.
Only Wyatt.
Okay. So
Virgil was cross-examined.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
So you're thinking there was a "you can't handle the truth" moment if Wyatt had been cross-examined?
I'm just thinking that the I've always just said that the trial was as unfair as the gunfight.
Oh,
You know, if you can't,
I don't see it as unfair, but
if you can't cross-examine Wyatt Earp, if you can't
Well-
cross-examine him,
Well,
you
the
just make a
statement was very
statement.
self-serving and very lawyerly crafted, from what I recall of it. Wyatt's statement, that is. And
well,
Go ahead, Jim.
Well, I mean,
let's
the
let
fact-
our guest
Yeah.
talk a little bit.
well, the fact that Virgil did testify and was cross-examined, to me, that kind of negates the fact that he didn't. I mean, they were standing side by side at the gunfight. So even though Wyatt couldn't be cross-examined, I don't know what else he would have said different from his brother, who was cross-examined. And in fact, both of them admitted that Wyatt fired the first shot. They were in agreement on that. So I just don't see. I don't know how it would have changed anything if they'd asked Wyatt questions, because they did ask questions of Virgil.
Why was? Do you have any idea why Wyatt was able to kind of just make a statement and Virgil was not, and he was able to be cross-examined?
well,
you know?
I don't. I never really read specifically what it was, but I understood it was some quirk of Arizona law.
Yes,
wasn't
but Virgil could have done the same thing. You know, he could have submitted a written statement. And I also think it's odd that, I mean, why didn't the prosecution call Doc Holliday? You know, why wasn't he? I mean, I think that would be a flaw in that would be a knock against the prosecution. They should have called Doc Holliday to have him testify, but they didn't.
Did Morgan submit any kind of statement or
He was
testimony or
apparently too
anything?
badly injured
Okay.
to testify.
Okay.
So I guess he was still bad. You know, he had a bullet that went across his shoulder blades and nicked his spine. So
Yeah,
he was
that's
laid
true.
up for a
That's
while.
true. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
And,
so
and of course, Wyatt was untouched, except some bullet
Yes.
holes in his shirt, in
Yes.
his jacket, which was the same thing later when he caught up with Curly Bill. It's just astounding how fortunate that guy was for all the gunfights he got into, that he never was hit by a bullet, was he?
No, he wasn't. Not at the OK Corral. And I think the only thing that happened at Curly Bill was a bullet hit like the heel of his boot and caused a bad bruise or something like that.
Are we talking about
he
Wyatt?
bruised his heel.
Yes, we're talking about Wyatt.
All right.
Wyatt.
So, is there any evidence that Wyatt was ever involved in any kind of gunplay in Dodge City and or Tombstone, other than when he went after Curly Bill and the murders at OK Corral?
Yes, in Dodge City, he did end up wounding a cowboy
that was running away on a horse. Was that the one?
Yes,
that was, yes,
that's the one. Yes.
That guy was on a horse going the other direction, and correct.
But the thing is that sadly, he didn't die right away. He got gangrene, so he really shouldn't have died from that.
Wasn't exactly a gunfight, though, right?
It was not
it was him shooting him in the back as he rode off.
Yeah,
correct. Am I wrong?
Right.
I'm having fun, but at the same time, am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong.
Okay.
No.
Has there been any other time where Wyatt Earp ever was involved in a gunfight that you're aware of, other than the fact that when he was shooting the guy in the back, and Curly Bill and the gunfight? OK Corral.
No, not the classic gunfight. I mean, he was in a fight with they captured the man who shot Dora Hand and murdered her, and but that was at a distance, and they shot him and his horse, and he survived. He did almost shoot himself once. I don't know if that counts. You remember that story where the gun fell out of his holster in Wichita?
Yeah.
And what's really funny about that is in his own account later, he doesn't mention that story, but he says you could always tell a rube or a newbie about their guns going off accidentally, because that's not supposed to happen with an experienced individual, but that did happen to him. So
yeah, I have a feeling with Johnny Ringo, when he shot the guy in the bar, that might have been some sort of accident. That really never seemed right. That Johnny Ringo. Maybe you've heard the story about him being in a bar, offering the guy a drink. He guy says, "Yeah, I'll have a beer," and he said, "No, I mean a drink." And he goes, "No, I just want a beer." So Johnny Ringo shoots him. I don't know if you're.
I never heard of that.
Yeah. That's the only time.
You know, one of the things about Johnny Ringo, and by the way, you are the scariest Johnny Ringo. Your scary eyes in the movie Tombstone.
Thank you.
They're pretty amazing. But anyway, you know, Johnny Ringo really wasn't a gunfighter. In fact, there's even a book that talks about him as like the title is, you know, No Gunfighter or whatever. He did associate with the Cowboys, and Wyatt Earp did believe, you know, he was partially responsible for Morgan Earp's death, and he was certainly looking for him. But he, you know, he was more of a, you know, a rustler and stealing cattle and sheep, and really not a gunfighter. In fact, I say in the book when Doc and Johnny Ringo had this confrontation on the street in Tombstone, it was the greatest gunfight that never was.
Yes.
You know, it never erupted into a gunfight.
Right.
So.
Are you talking about him and Doc, or him and?
Yes, him and Doc.
Okay.
Him and Doc got into a confrontation, and they were pulled apart and their guns taken away, and nothing ever happened. So they never really had a fight.
You include an interesting episode in the book that Johnny apparently got to know Kate.
Yes.
And would see her on occasion and give her money. Is that right?
Yes.
He was seeing her behind Doc's back.
Well, so here's the thing. So I mentioned before that she only had $75, which Doc lost in gambling in Tucson. And Johnny Ringo had encouraged, you know, this is during the hearing, and he goes up to Kate and he says, "You really need to leave because the Cowboys are gunning for Doc. And if you hang around here, you're liable to get hurt or shot by accident." He says, "Well, I have no money." So he gives her money to leave town. And that again was a sore point between Doc and Johnny.
I can imagine,
yeah. And then Doc apparently saying things about Johnny on the streets. And there's a funny, this is in that confrontation. And Johnny says to Doc, "You've been saying things about me, you know," and Doc says, "Well, I don't believe I have, but if I have, it still goes." So
I meant it,
yeah. If I have, it still goes. You know, so
do you cover, because it's been a long time since I've read your book now, and I get it mixed up with the other books that I read, but do you cover Wyatt Earp's judge, being the judge at the professional fight?
No, I don't. Well, I just barely mention it.
You mentioned it, yeah.
Yeah, that's a highly controversial. I mean, and of course, you know, fittingly, it's divided into newspapers that, you know, either support the outcome of the fight or don't support the outcome. And what happens is for those
it seems like he was involved in a lot of that kind of shit.
He was, yeah. But anyway,
go ahead.
The papers.
Tell me what you know about it.
Well, the papers. I mean, apparently it was a low blow that very few people saw, if there was a low blow. But what happened is that the newspapers took that opportunity to dredge up the whole Tombstone episode, the vendetta, you know, the murder warrant that was still outstanding actually for the Frank Stillwell killing in Tucson.
Yeah.
So this brought all this back into the public light, Wyatt Earp's career. And there's tons of articles in the papers. I think this was in the 1890s or.
It was 1896. It was 1896.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So there were, you can go to the newspaper websites today and find all kinds of stuff about Wyatt Earp that put him back on the front pages, actually, and not in a good way.
Yes. No, and I believe that was the lead item about him in the New York Times obituary when he died.
Oh, right, yes.
They led by saying that he had, you know, refereed this controversial heavyweight. It was a heavyweight championship fight, as I recall.
Yes. Oh, it was big money, huge money.
And I believe you say in the book that he had refereed other fights?
Yes,
too?
He did. Yeah. He was known for that. Not a lot, but I mean, he was known.
But that's what he was doing when he settled in California, wasn't it?
Yeah, apparently he was actually, you know, he was somewhat of a boxer, and I don't really discuss that in the book. So he knew about boxing, and
he actually hit people when they were looking at him.
Maybe, I don't know.
And hit him with? Did he have a gun in his hand when he got in the ring?
Oh no, just joking on. Let's go to what do they call it, Jim? You know,
the Vendetta Ride.
The Vendetta Ride. Hey,
okay.
Jim knows me better than you know. We talked about this so much. The Vendetta Ride, the way that it's portrayed in the movie, and the way that the voiceover basically describes the Earps kind of cleaning up the West, after the shootout at OK Corral. And there's people being shot off their horses. There's horses that are jumping through window. I mean, it's like 20, 30 people being killed. Obviously, there were 3 people that he shot, if I'm not mistaken. Do you know who those 3 people are?
Yeah, so it would be, of course, the big one. The 2 big ones are Frank Stillwell and Curly Bill Brocious. But we don't know that Curly Bill was involved in Morgan's death or whatever. But then there was another individual known as Indian Charlie, who was killed and
murdered. Well, no,
he was shot.
No,
he was shot. Yeah.
Was he shot? And so, I mean, did he have a gun on him? I mean,
I don't know, but I mean, it was a revenge killing. It was they weren't. Let me put it this way: they were not taking prisoners, Michael.
No.
Yeah. Okay. So I would.
He didn't bring any zip ties with him. He wasn't.
No, he did not.
No.
No.
All right. So go ahead.
Well, here's the thing. So, and this is where Wyatt uses the law for his own means or ends. He's a deputy U.S. Marshal, and he is deputized to appoint deputies himself. And so he has a posse initially of 8 men, and after Morgan is assassinated, 7 men. But what Wyatt decides, and he's very open about this, when they tried to prosecute for Virgil's assassination, the Cowboys brought 7 witnesses that Ike was someplace else and it was not there, even though they found Ike's hat where the gunshots came from. His hat was there, but he had all these fellow buddies that testified that, oh no, he was miles away. And so Wyatt decided that after Morgan's assassination, he says, I'm not going to take any more alibis. I'm not going to stand for that. And he used his badge to go out and assassinate those men he felt were responsible for Morgan's death and the maiming of his brother Virgil.
Yeah, that's one takeaway I got from your book, that Wyatt was pretty clear that he wasn't.
Yes.
He was fed up with alibis, that if he arrested these guys, they would just get alibied out. And
Yes.
he was looking for blood from the start.
He was looking for blood, very clear about that. And he admitted that in newspaper interviews a short time later as well. But he was also, he held out hopes that he would get some kind of a pardon. It never came. He thought the governor of Arizona.
He thought he was still going to run for sheriff.
He did for a while.
When the whole thing was over, he thought he was still going to run for sheriff.
Yeah, but that didn't happen.
He thought he would get a pardon, and that he would, because he got a warrant for killing Stillwell.
Yes, he did. Murder warrant.
Yeah.
So did Doc Holliday. So did the entire posse, actually.
Yeah.
But Michael, no, they did not go out and clean up the West. He went out to kill those he felt were responsible or in cahoots in the killing of his brother, and he willingly used his office to do that.
But after killing 3 of them, then he was more or less on the run at that point.
Yes, I mean, it was. Right. He decided it was much better for him to leave Arizona because they did issue. I mean, it was the law. They issued an arrest warrant.
Johnny Ringo might have been on the posse.
Yes, he was on Johnny Bean's posse. That's correct.
Yeah.
And apparently Curly Bill, apparently he had his own posse and was also looking for Earp and his men. So there were all these posses chasing after one another. Yeah. What I thought was funny, though, was that Johnny Bean, who always had somewhat kind of an angle, he was part owner of a livery stable. And so he was getting money for like renting out his horses,
right,
and expenses, and so it was better for him to never capture the Earps. The more days he was in the field, the more money he made.
That's true. You point that out. He would go out for a day and come back, and go out for a day and come back, and build the county every time.
Yes. And that's why when after Doc Holliday was arrested in Colorado, Johnny Bean wanted to go and collect him, but the people in Pima County they said, no, we've already gotten a bill from Johnny Bean. We're going to send Bob Paul, our own sheriff. We're not going to spend more money on you. So
can I just want to make sure that we just cover all the horrific things that Wyatt Earp did during his life before we.
And Michael, you're such an Earp hater. I mean,
I am. I'll admit to that. You know,
Well, it's fitting.
not either one of his brothers. Just Wyatt. Just Wyatt, because Wyatt.
Yeah.
I grew up thinking Wyatt Earp was a hero.
Yeah.
They've made now 90 movies and 90 television shows and written 90 books to the lionization of Wyatt Earp, and I just don't think it's fair.
Well, but I hope, Michael, that you got from my book that I don't cover anything. I mean, I talk about those.
Yes, you do.
Less than charitable aspects.
Of course you do, and that's what I wanted to ask you about. Okay. Is after his whatever happens to his first wife, and he goes off and gets a little crazy. Him and a couple of buddies steal a couple of horses, don't they?
Yes, that's correct.
And can you tell me? Aren't they? Isn't he arrested for being a horse thief?
Yes, he
is. And thrown
yes.
into jail?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
then he
I guess like in a lot of jails in those days, they were not real sturdy, and he escaped.
No, they figured it was him and some other prisoners that figured out a way to break out. But what's important about that episode is, and again, it's not something that came out until years later, but
didn't come out in Stewart, whatever his Lakes.
No.
He didn't mention that when he was when he was.
It didn't come out while the wife was still alive either.
Yeah, but this is the thing, Michael and Jim. The West, you could reinvent yourself. Yeah. You could actually escape your past, and that's what Wyatt did. Today, that could never happen.
Yeah.
They'd find your old school yearbooks and this crazy picture you took, and something you did, and you were able to reinvent yourself and have another career. And Wyatt did that more than once.
That's sort of that's the impression I got of Wyatt. I mean, he wasn't in Dodge very long. He wasn't in Wichita very long. Whenever he would go off to do some other thing, it never really worked out for him, it seemed like. Was he much of a businessman? Did he ever enjoy any success in any?
I don't think he was much of a businessman. I think he aspired to be. I mean, when they were in Tombstone, he invested in mines and in city lots. And I really feel like Tombstone was where he thought that he was going to settle down, and this was going to be, where he made something of himself.
But didn't he invest in a lot of these things and then get to a point where he was almost broke? Is that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Happened.
So he was a bad businessman, and it's always been. Yeah. Okay. It's always been my theory, that like starting with his father. And you look at him, the ambition is clearly there. There is ambition to get ahead, to make money, to be prominent, to be somebody.
Be your own boss,
Yes. Yeah. And I just don't think the fucking Earps are very smart people.
Well,
I just don't think they were very intelligent. I think they were thugs. I think they were pretty good at hitting people over the head with their guns, and they maybe had the bravado to do that.
Strong-arming people,
Strong-arming people.
Well, I would say that's what was needed in places like Wichita and Dodge City. When you're dealing with drunken cowboys, wife beaters, or whatever, you need someone that's going to do that and throw them in jail. So you need that kind of character.
I understand that you need, thugs to go out and I just think a guy like Johnny Bean probably had more on the ball when it came to like business and so it's always been my contention that like they were so ambitious and they were never successful, and then he went on from the prize fighting, and he went up to Alaska to mine gold, and was he was really unsuccessful in everything that he ever did. Would that be a fair statement about?
I don't know everything, but here's something that will support your theory as far as
thank you
not being adept at business. So he had heard about the big mining strike in Tombstone. And he had a really good idea before he leaves Dodge. He says, I'm going to go to Tombstone and start a stage line, which that makes sense. You can make money as a stage line. So he actually bought a used Concord coach in Dodge City, trailed it all the way to Tombstone. Well, when he gets there were already 2 stage lines. And so he was not able to do that. So he ends up selling the coach to one of the stage lines. So, he was thinking, it was a good idea, but somebody beat him to the punch.
Well, but also
that's like me saying now, like maybe I should invest in Google.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're a little late. But Johnny Bean, I mean, as I say in the book, he was Johnny on the spot. He was a glad hander. If there was any kind of appointment he could get, no, he was really good at getting appointments.
I'm sure. I've never asked this, I've never read this, but I just want to know if you have any knowledge of the fact that when the Earps really got into town and they lost most of their money and were really in trouble, that if they ever just like kind of sent their wives out to make a little bit of money for the family?
No, I don't. I have no evidence of that. But as they say, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So, but I have no evidence of that.
I got the impression that kind of when all else failed, Wells Fargo would be there with a lifeline for him.
Yes, that was the case. That was the case. Because they worked for Wells Fargo, they were shotgun messengers. Wyatt, and then later his brother.
Wyatt was good at that. He was a good shotgun.
Yes,
messenger.
He was good at that. And they did support him because they were. I mean, really, anytime a stage was robbed or horses or some kind of theft, it wasn't the Cowboys in the posse. It was the Earp brothers and Doc Holliday. They were going after the lawbreakers. So the Wells Fargo loved the Earp brothers and Doc Holliday.
Well, I think in the 1930s, there was a Western poet who called Wyatt nothing but a company cop, referring to Wells. He was basically a company cop.
Yeah,
and
interesting.
That his loyalties were more toward Wells Fargo than to any concepts of justice or law and order.
There was a newspaper interview with some representatives of Wells Fargo that was published after the OK Corral and during the Vendetta Ride, and they praised the Earps, and they didn't praise Doc Holliday, but they said that they couldn't vouch for his character, but they said that he wasn't involved in the stage holdup.
Well, because there was a rumor that Doc had done one of the stage robberies.
Didn't he get thrown in jail? Wasn't he thrown in jail for that? Wasn't Doc?
Yes, briefly, because Big Nose Kate actually went to Johnny Bean,
ratted him out.
Ratted him out and said he was involved and
narked him. Yeah.
Oh, those women, those scorned women.
She was very upset, and that's the thing. My book is about this friendship between Wyatt and Doc, and what tells me how strong that friendship was how much Big Nose Kate hated Wyatt.
Yeah, there you go. I've got a few friends like Doc Holliday.
Yeah.
That my succeeding wives have never really got along with very well. Good. They were my Doc Hollidays.
Well, a lot of people questioned Wyatt about what do you see in Doc? I mean, Bat had no use for Doc Holliday, did he?
No.
Bat Masterson.
Well, according to your book too, there was a point where Wyatt Earp was surrounded by 4 or 5 guys. And then you could tell that story, and that supposedly is the reason, and it's kind of. I don't know if it's mentioned in the movie, but tell that story, and that's kind of the beginning. This has been a little bit unfair, Mark, for you, because your book is not about defending Wyatt Earp.
No.
You've got a really wonderful book about the entire arena and time
and the
people involved in the relationships. And I've kind of come at you, and I didn't mean to. I started this whole thing telling my son and telling Jim, I'm going to, he's the professional. I'm going to sit back, and it still gets me.
That anger's going to boil over at some point.
I still want their blood, and I still want their soul, and I want them right now. Go ahead.
So this happens in August of 1878, and one of the myths that you often see in the movies is that Wyatt Earp is the marshal of Dodge City. He was actually the assistant marshal. He wasn't the chief law officer in Dodge City. But and Wyatt told this story more than once. In fact, he even testified. It was part of the testimony. He says why he's a friend of Doc Holliday. So in 1878. Wyatt is outside or near the Long Branch Saloon in Dodge City, And there's a bunch of unruly drunken cowboys that's they're going to shoot up the town, and they see Wyatt standing alone, and they quickly surround him, and they apparently have very serious bad intentions, and they have their guns drawn on him, and they're going to do some harm. And Wyatt actually thought that he was going to be shot or lose his life. Well, while this is going on, Doc Holliday is at a monte table inside the Long Branch, and he sees through these big pane windows the cowboys, threatening Wyatt. And he asks the gambler across the table, "You have a gun?" And the guy says, "Yes." So Doc takes his gun, and then Doc pulls his own gun. So he has two guns in his hand. He bursts out the doors of the Long Branch and he yells at the cowboys to hold up their arms or hold up their hands. They do. Wyatt draws his guns, and they march them all off to jail. And Wyatt said, from that moment, I was Doc Holliday's friend. And he says that he saved my life. So Wyatt, really believed that his life was in danger. But that doesn't answer, though, Michael, why they remain friends. There was another bond. Something else was going on between them. It's one thing, somebody saved my life, I'm your buddy. But no, they stuck together through all these different episodes and events, some dangerous. And I think they really did enjoy each other's company. And as Jim said, Bat Masterson, I didn't care that much for Doc, but the thing is that Wyatt liked him, So,
Yeah,
as I said before, Kate Elder, Doc Big Nose Kate hated Wyatt and his influence. And I feel like, I mentioned this earlier, Doc didn't grow up with a family. He was an only child.
Yeah.
And he felt like these guys, felt like he had a family with him. And Virgil even said later, I think that the Earps were the only friends that Doc Holliday had in Tombstone.
Yeah.
So it was a relationship that was much deeper than just the fact that Doc Holliday had saved or supposedly saved Wyatt's life.
Didn't Wyatt say that Doc made him laugh?
I don't remember that.
I thought I remember
That could be
somewhere where people would ask him, what do you see in this guy? Well, he makes me laugh.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
And that's the sad thing about when you're talking about a friendship, they didn't really speak that much about it. I mean, Doc Holliday would say, "Yes, we are friends," and Wyatt would say, "Yes, we are friends," but they didn't really go into it much more than that, other than the fact that they were together a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, like I said, I just want everybody to know that's listened to this that this book encompasses really a lot in the friendship between the two of them, and I think Jim and I have read 10 or 12 books. We mentioned them. What's his name? McQuinn?
Jeff Gwynn.
Jeff
Gwynn's book, yeah.
Jeff Gwynn.
And then there's the Gary Roberts book on Doc Holliday and Casey Tiefertiller on Wyatt Earp. And,
and Tom Clavin.
Yes,
the book
right.
I think that your book.
Michael and I read a book by Steve Lubett, who is a law professor at Northwestern.
Oh, right, yes.
Called Murder in Tombstone, which is
Yes.
kind of an analysis of the
trial.
Hearing.
Of the trial,
Of the
right,
trial,
Jim?
but it was it was a kind of an in-depth analysis of the hearing. Actually, it was, but from the perspective of a lawyer, that was, I think, pretty interesting too.
Yeah,
But,
there's lots of good books out there. Mine's the first dual biography to examine their lives.
I was going to say yours kind of charts the paths each one took to get to Tombstone, from the time they met, and the ensuing years that bring back together at Tombstone for that kind of fateful reunion. So,
Jim, let me see. We stole the money from the children, and then he stole the horses. I thought there was one other horrific thing he had done during that time that I wanted to get out, but I'm not sure if I can think of that. But
there were all the arrests. I got a kick out of putting a brothel on a barge.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
I've always said about this is listen, I don't have anything against the working girl. Just
sure,
don't.
Yeah.
The pimps, not so much.
Yeah.
But he wasn't even a very good pimp.
Well, and he must not have been because
you describe. I tried to get this out of you before. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. But weren't the women that he was pimping out kind of like not well fed or not? Is it your book that says that they were kind of attractive, but like you used the word meaning? I thought it meant like skinny and like not.
Oh, well, there is a quote where they do discuss the women that they found, as part of the brothel or the floating brothel.
Yes.
I can't remember exactly the description, but what I found interesting was that at least in one case, because he was arrested more than once for this.
Oh yeah.
But one time when both him and Morgan are arrested as pimps, and they don't have the money to pay the fine, so they choose to just stay in jail. Yeah. So they must not have been making much money.
Yes, you got room and board there, right?
I guess, yeah. Yeah. And that's the other thing about my book is that I had the benefit of all the scholarship in recent years where we know much more about Wyatt's past. We know more about Doc's past. I mean, that episode in Georgia where he might have murdered a couple of black swimmers over a dispute over a swimming hole.
Yeah.
And those things, we're just finding more about, and I'm glad to be able to incorporate that along with my own findings. Of course, I do primary research as well, but I had the benefit of these previous scholars, like you say, Jeff Gwynn or Casey Tiefertiller, and they did great books, which I did make use of.
Yeah. All right. Well, your book is named Brothers of the Gun, and
available today.
Today? Yeah, it'll be today.
Brand new.
Brand new. Just come out
and,
from Penguin Random House.
As Mark said, he's had the
available on Amazon. That's where I looked it up.
It's everywhere. Yeah, everywhere fine books are sold.
Right. And he's had the ability to draw upon other people's works, and I thoroughly enjoyed the book, Mark. And
thank you.
I'm going to
go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say I'm going to read some of your other books as well, because you've written on topics about the West considerably.
Yes.
You wrote about the ill-fated Jesse James raid into Northfield, Minnesota.
Raid,
yes, and that was the subject of a really interesting movie some years ago called The Great Northfield Minnesota Raid, where Robert Duvall played a kind of crazed Jesse James. And
that was a great portrayal. By the way, 150th anniversary of the Northfield Raid is next year.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, 1876.
Right? Wow.
Yeah.
And you wrote about Custer, is that right?
I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah. That's also the 150th next year.
That's true. I was born in Billings, Montana. And
oh wow.
We moved out west when I was 5. And my parents took me and my younger brother to the Custer battlefield, which is near Billings.
Oh wow.
When we must have been 4 years old. And even at 4 years old, and even decades after the event, you could just tell that something god awful had happened at that spot. There was just a pallor that hangs over the place,
Yeah, that book is The Earth Is All That Lasts, and it's a dual biography of Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Are you
so, Michael?
Sure. Go ahead.
Michael, the next time, let me know the next time we talk, because I'm going to reread the Spicer hearing and try to memorize all that testimony.
From what I understand, the book that we read from the author from
the law school.
What law school is it? Chicago?
Northwestern. It's the same one your father attended. The same law school your dad went to, Michael.
That book, covers the trial, and they've always said it was Ike Clanton who kind of started making stuff up, or he wasn't a very good witness, and it was Ike Clanton's fault that not his fault, but he just was a really bad witness, and of course,
very bad,
but you could say that.
And I, of course, just wanting to so badly stick with my guns and the way that I feel about things, have always said, well, you take some cowboy, he's like Ike Clanton. you get a couple lawyers around them, and
Hmm.
good lawyers. Good lawyers could talk to me right now, and I'd be in handcuffs walking away if I had to talk about the last 10 years of my life, and in front of a jury. Lawyers are good. They're good, but anyway, this has been a real pleasure. I'm really glad. I had a good time. I enjoy the subject, and I'm passionate about it. But
Obviously.
it's all just in fun. I have such a good time talking about it, and such a good time kind of arguing. Well, what about this and what about that?
Yeah.
And
there are whole issues we never even got to talk about.
I suggest anybody
tangents you can go off on.
I suggest anybody that's interested in the relationship between Wyatt and Doc read Mark Gardner's book. It's called Brothers of the Gun. It's coming out today. Brothers of the Gun by Mark Gardner. It is a fascinating read, and because he's had the luck or whatever it is, to be able benefit. Thank you, Jim. To look back at other great authors, his book is really as up to date.
A real contribution to the field.
And we really, I really appreciate you coming on, and maybe we'll have you back after a while, after your book sells really well, and we'll have a second round.
So.
after the movie rights get sold.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Michael. I mean, it was a real thrill for me to have this discussion and to be on your podcast. I love your podcast. I do listen to it. And
Thank
so,
you.
yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to have this debate.
What are you working on anything now?
My next book is going to be also for Dutton. And I'm going to examine the bushwhacker career of Jesse and Frank James when they fought in the Civil War under Quantrell and Bloody Bill
Really?
Yeah.
What a fascinating subject.
Yeah, just that period when this led to their outlawry, of course. But
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, focusing on them as in fact, the title of the book is Bushwhackers, but I still got to write it. So right now I'm promoting.
Got the title. That's like me with a lot of you. Like, hey, have you ever written a script, Michael? I got the title, but but you follow through, and you certainly did with Brothers of the Gun. Mark, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and good luck with the book, and
thank you.
Your future endeavors, and
we'll hope to talk to you again.
Hope to see you again.
I hope so too. Yeah, I'd love it.
You bet.
Thank
Great.
you.
Then you are doing music.